The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
The mind of Pat Popolizio is a wondrous thing. And for you Pac wrestling fans, you'll get to go inside the mind of the Skip each and every episode here on the Pac Mentality Pop-Ins podcast. Now, here's your host, NC State Director of Athletics Digital Communications, Brian Reinhardt.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Pac Mentality Pop-Ins podcast. I'm your host, NC State Director of Athletics Digital Communications, Brian Reinhardt. And usually at this time, I introduce the head coach of the Wolfpack, Pat Popolizio. But as of this recording, Pat is actually out on the golf course. The Wolfpack Wrestling Club hosted their first ever golf outing. It was out at the Wildwood Green Golf Club up in North Raleigh, and just a tremendous turnout. I was up there for the early portion of it, and Pat's still out there. He's not golfing, but he's riding around, shaking hands, and just meeting tons of former alumni who have come back. So we gave Pat this episode off. So in lieu of Pat being here, I stepped it up for him, and I actually got 3 interviews for this podcast episode. Up first, out at that golf outing, one of the alums that came back who we got a chance to catch up with was former Wolfpack NCAA champion and current MMA world champion, Darrion Caldwell. Darrion talked to us about his time at NC State, what's going on in the MMA world, and just what's ahead in his future as he just has made such a tremendous transition into the MMA world. Up second after Darrion, we have our Hidden Heroes sponsored segment. Thank you again to our anonymous donor. But in this episode's Hidden Heroes segment, we meet NC State's academic advisor, Marcus Osborne, and he tells us what the guys go through in getting classes, just what kind of support they have in the academic support office. And then our third interview, record breaking here for the Pac Mentality Pop-Ins podcast, I caught up with Dan Seffering, who for Flow Wrestling, he put together the preseason ACC rankings. So I got Dan on the telephone and we went weight by weight where he sees NC State in these rankings, what the rankings hold with some other schools, and he gives some of his predictions. So stay tuned for 3 tremendous interviews in this episode of the Pac Mentality Pop-Ins podcast. Joining us now on the Pac Mentality Pop-Ins podcast, one of NC State's 7 former national champions and current Bellator MMA bantamweight champion, Darrion Caldwell. Of course, everyone knows him in MMA as The Wolf. Darrion, glad to catch up with you and glad to have you on the podcast today.
Hey man, it's good to be here.
Your post-MMA interviews, they're very epic, not always PG, but we'll see how this interview goes. But we're actually taping this at the Wolfpack Wrestling Club's first ever golf outing. So right off the bat, are you golfing today?
Absolutely. I'm looking for a hole-in-one today.
When was the last time you've actually got out and golfed?
Last time I golfed was the last time I was here at NC State.
Okay. So, you might not be the best golfer. We'll see. But your NC State career goes down as one of the best in school history. 29 NCAA champion at 149 pounds, 2-time All-American, and very impressive 4-time ACC champion. Very impressive wrestling amateur resume. How would you sum up your Wolfpack career?
My Wolfpack career was, I feel like it was stellar. I did a pretty good job here, just being able to win a national title is a hard feat, And so anytime, you accomplish that, it's a good feeling. So I feel like I had a stellar career here at NC State. I'm looking forward to watching the Pac grow and continue to grow. They're really solid right now. So I'm looking forward to. When I was here, it almost felt like just me.
Yep.
So to be able to see a bunch of guys just really putting in work and getting the results that they deserve, is awesome.
You mentioned that national championship. You tried out for the U.S. Olympic trials after college, made it to the 3rd round, but then you went into MMA. Was it hard to give up wrestling and go to MMA at the time?
No, not at the time. At the time, I was dealing with a lot of adversity, and not that I was running from the sport, but I felt like new opportunities, new goals had been set, and so MMA was the perfect outlet for me outside of wrestling.
What was the transition like from going to college wrestling to MMA?
Well, I feel like being a wrestler, is the transition to MMA is really easy, because all we know is the grind. We really, just put in countless hours of, body labor. It's just labor work nonstop. So the transition was pretty easy. Actually, MMA is a lot easier on my body, as opposed to just doing the wrestling thing. But the transition was pretty cool. I like the transition because it's a lot more than just one martial art. To be able to like learn the jiu-jitsu factor and the stand-up aspect. That's pretty cool. It brings out a different dimension to combat sports.
You mentioned the easy transition, but college you were 149. MMA you're probably down to about 135 now. You're 5'10". How is that weight cut? Still, you're 30 years old. I don't know if you want that out there, but how is the weight cut now down to 135?
The weight cut to 35, it's extensive, in a sense where you almost got to do a training camp before a training camp to get, because I walk around at 170. So to get down to 155 is, to be able to leave practices at 149, to fight at 35 is almost a training camp before the actual training camp. So it's extensive, but it gets done,
You got your first title opportunity this past October, won the Bellator Bantamweight Championship. How was the feeling of raising that title belt?
Well, anytime you're a champion, you're a champion, to get that belt, it just brings all the hard work and everything else in perspective. It just puts it in perspective that, everything that you've been working for, it paid off, and so to be able to be a champion and get that belt around my waist, is definitely awesome.
And before you won that belt, you switched training camps. Where are you training now, and how's that been going?
Well, I'm at Alliance down in San Diego. It's going great. I got the best training partners, best coaches in the world. Having guys like Eric Del Fiero and Dominic Cruz, guide me throughout my MMA career, is a big thing for me. It's just, it's been huge. It's kind of like catapulted the speed in which I'm getting better at. I feel like these last 2 years I've been at Alliance, I've been getting a lot better. So to be able to expedite, process or progress is always good. So I'm feeling good at Alliance.
And you've been back to NC State a couple times since Pat Popolizio and his staff took over the program. You came to an ACC duel a couple of seasons ago, and right now you're back for the alumni weekend. I'm sure you follow from afar, but how impressed are you with what the program has accomplished this last couple of years?
I'm extremely impressed with the way the Wolfpack has conducted themselves on and off the mats. Pat Popolizio has done a great job. The way he gets kids to believe in what he's doing is important, and anytime you got a leader like him, it's a recipe for success.
You were actually in the mat room this morning, but still I want to ask you, wrestling is a huge part of your MMA success. You're one of the best grapplers there is. Over the recent years, is there anybody from the NC State wrestling team you would like to have in a match to help you train?
Is there anyone in the wrestling room here at NC State right now?
Would you take on Gwizdowski?
Can I take him down? No. That dude's I'm out of wrestling right now, and even if I was wrestling, Nick G. Wiz is so good, but wrestling for me right now, I'm a guy who I'm fine on my back, so to come to the wrestling room and compete with a guy like Hayden Hidley, I probably won't, It's just a different levels to, wrestling, and, these guys have it.
Now moving forward, what do you have left to accomplish in MMA personally?
Well, there's the 145-pound belt here at Bellator. There's the UFC 135-pound gold, and as well as the 145-pound gold at UFC. So to be able to win two divisions and two organizations, that's huge for me. And, that's what I got my eyes set on.
Will we still be seeing the backflip celebration?
Absolutely. That's my patent, ever since I was a high school kid, winning state titles it was a backflip thing. So absolutely.
Darrion, it was great to finally catch up with you, to get you on the podcast. I know you have a fun day on the golf course lined up, and you'll be going over to Carter Finley Stadium to enjoy some football. And we'd love to have you come back and watch some more Wolfpack Wrestling duels.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's go, Pat.
We are back with our sponsored Hidden Heroes segment. After a very generous donation made by one of our listeners over the summer, we're now getting a chance to meet some of the many people behind the scenes that work with the NC State wrestling team. In this episode's Hidden Heroes segment, we are joined via telephone by our academic advisor for the NC State wrestling team, Marcus Osmond. Marcus, classes have started a couple weeks ago, so I know you are busy getting all the guys squared away with classes and study halls. So thanks for taking the time and talking to us about what you do with the NC State wrestling team.
Yeah, not a problem. Definitely a busy time of the year trying to get these guys rolling with the semester.
Now, you're also a little bit of a guinea pig. This is the very first interview on the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast that I'm recording on my computer. So it's great, exciting times here on the podcast with this influx of technology. And I'll add, I keep begging NC State for a much-deserved raise, and I'm still waiting. But they did fork over some money to help me record interviews over Skype, so I thank NC State Athletics. But back to our guest, somebody who spends so much time with our guys and helping them through the rigors of the academic side of being a student athlete. Marcus, I guess I'll start with your journey first. You came to NC State in December of 2016, having previous stops at Missouri State and Southern Miss. What made you want to get into college athletics?
Oh, man, that's kind of tough to answer. I originally started out my college career as a student athlete myself, went to school to play baseball, decided after a year that wasn't for me, and ended up just transferring and going to school at the University of Arkansas. After I finished undergrad, didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life still, so I decided to not really take any time off, went back to school and got a master's degree. And when it was in my master's degree, I kind of figured that I wanted to work with student athletes somehow in some sort of support capacity. And I thought with my background, and I love education, I actually love going to school. I feel like I'm a professional student. I'm taking classes right now, so I'd never stop. So I figured, that's something I want to do. And so I got my master's degree. And as soon as I did that, I landed a job at Missouri State. And ever since then, that's all I've been doing the last 5 years, essentially, is working with hands-on with student athletes and their academic endeavors and trying to get them through school.
And you brought this up, but you yourself were a student athlete. You played baseball at Missouri Southern State University. Do you feel that your own track through college helps you understand the time constraints on the student athletes here at NC State?
I think it helps a little bit. It's a different level. I went to a Division II school, so you don't have nearly the amount of support system there. The resources aren't there, and so there's no such thing as tutoring provided by the athletic, funded by athletics. We're actually, here we're on the Division of Academic and Student Affairs, but we didn't have any of those tutoring resources. We didn't have any of those mentoring resources. We didn't have an academic person that we could go to and just talk about classes and helping us schedule things. And so we did have all those other time demands of, we had lifting in the mornings, we had practice in the afternoons, we had some sort of just like study table as a team. But, going through all that, I think it kind of helps you see the time demands of student athletes. And obviously this is a higher profile here in the ACC than it is at a smaller Division II school. And so these students have even more demands on their plate in terms of whether it's, dealing with media, just being in the limelight because of the spotlight. And so, I guess it's kind of, in a sense, yes, it did help me, but I don't think you get the scope at that level.
And originally from Missouri, you've been in Raleigh coming up on 2 years now. How much do you like living in Raleigh?
Oh, Raleigh's great. I love it. I think for me, I love the proximity to the beach and the mountains. I love them both. So it's kind of, you get to split the time being in Raleigh. Plus, you're in the state capital, so you've got a lot of things to do in the area. It's a great place.
And I said that you are the wrestling team's academic advisor. So give us a rundown to how you would describe your job to somebody outside of athletics.
That's a tough one. When people ask this, like, oh, so you're a tutor or whatever, and that's not really our job at all. So it's very tough to explain, especially in this short amount of time. But I think, one of our biggest job, I guess there's a lot that goes into it, but we're here to support. I mean, in reality, this is academic support program for student athletes. And so that's exactly what our job is. We're here to support them, set them up with tutoring, mentoring, look at their academic profiles, whether they're incoming freshmen or they're returning student athletes. We'll look at previous history in terms of grades each semester. We'll look at their course load. If they're incoming freshmen, we look at test scores, high school GPA, and things like that. We try to develop a support plan for them, and that might include, you've got tutoring a couple times a week where you're going to sit down, you're going to work in content-specific subjects, and you're going to cover that subject, or you might have a mentor, and we'll set these guys up with somebody that just helps them manage their time, transition to college, work on test taking or study taking or study strategies. But we also monitor their eligibility in terms of the NCAA. And I say their eligibility, we are just dealing with the academic side of things. We're not dealing with impermissible benefits or anything like that. We're just looking at academics. So we're making sure that they're meeting benchmarks, that they're making progress towards graduating, making progress towards a degree, keeping the correct GPA, enrolled in the correct number of hours each semester, and enrolled in classes that are going to help them graduate and get them closer to graduation and reach their goals. So there's really a lot that goes into it. Like I said, we're housed technically under the Division of Academic and Student Affairs, but we also report to athletics. So we've got that dual reporting line. So everybody is involved and hands-on with the academic piece of the student athlete.
I was going to say, you're the academic advisor, but what other resources are available to the guys on our team through the academic support program here at NC State?
Yeah, so obviously as their academic coordinator, I work with them in terms of helping them schedule classes. I'll sit down, I meet with the guys basically on a weekly basis. Probably 90% of the guys I sit down with one-on-one each week and build that relationship with them. We talk about how classes are going, grades, how they're performing, any upcoming tests or anything like that, how we're getting prepared. But we also talk about life and things like that. But we also have a tutoring and mentoring program here. And so they're different in the sense that tutoring is specific content area of a subject, and mentoring is for student athletes who maybe just need that structure. They need somebody to help them. They've never taken notes in their life, or they just need somebody to talk to, figure out college, transition from high school to college, or just to stay on track. Maybe some students don't know, they've never used a planner or a calendar, and they just need somebody that can kind of keep them up to date with what's going on. So they have all these resources available to them. We have a math lab in here. We have a science lab. So students in those subject areas can just pop in and get tutoring help without even needing an appointment. And it's just available on a drop-in basis for them. And we've got computer labs for them, free printing, basically anything at their disposal.
And 17 newcomers on this year's squad. I know you were busy when they were enrolling in summer too. And that is actually one aspect that's really taken off the last few years. So many student athletes are enrolling in the summer before their freshman year. So I want to ask you, what is that accomplishment from an academic side of things for our guys coming in early, and what kind of courses are they taking?
Yeah, I think coming in the summer really helps them get that jump start. And so they come in first off, they're getting ahead of the rest of the student body. They're coming in and they're taking maybe 3 or 6 hours. And so that allows them to maybe back off of a credit, a couple of credits in the normal semester when they're going to be busier if they get ahead in the summer classes. But it really does help them with the transition from high school to college too, because it is a bridge program. And coming in the summer, they are in class every single day. It's not like a normal semester where you're taking class Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, whatever it is. The class meets every day. And so it keeps them busy, kind of helps them see what the actual semester is going to be like. They come here in the summer, they take class. They do have a lot more free time than they do in the normal semester, so that kind of throws things off. But they're also working out, doing some work in the wrestling room. But it really depends on their major. They'll take anything. Some of the guys might come in and they'll take a biology, or they'll take a psychology class, or they'll take an intro to business, or whatever it is that they're majoring in. We try to put them in a class that's going to help them get closer to a degree, and not just something that is a class just to be enrolled. And so a lot of these guys we bring in the summer, we're trying to get them jump start. And so that helps us, especially down the road when we've got to pass a certain number of hours. If we're using that summer, it definitely helps us get ahead of the game and allows some of these guys to graduate in 3.5 to 4 years and then take that extra year if they were to redshirt to get either a second degree or start a master's program or something like that.
And for those newcomers, how does the process of selecting a major work?
Well, some of them put it on their application. So if you choose a major and you put it on your application, so if you know what you want to do well ahead of time before you even get here and you put it on your application, you get accepted in that major, those guys are in a major when they get here. Others, though, go through a process where we'll just try some classes. They give us, like, here's what I want to, here's some possibilities of what I want to major in. And so we'll set them up that first semester in some classes that'll kind of allow them to get their feet wet, whether they want to take a science class, if it's chemistry or biology, if they're interested in the life sciences, but they also might be interested in business. And so we'll throw them in like an economics or intro business class. It kind of allows them to get their feet wet in both subject areas and see if they enjoy one or over the other. And we also teach a freshman orientation class to these student athletes the first semester that they're here, that all student athletes take. And within that major week, or in that class, we cover them different majors offered on campus. We try to help them pick out a major by the end of the first semester. And they go through it once they actually choose a major. They go through what's called a change of degree application, and they apply for this major, and they have to meet certain benchmarks in order to get accepted once they actually get here on campus.
And when it comes to the academic side of things, what are some of the things that our coaches stress to you to stress to the guys?
Accountability is big. And so, if you're supposed to be somewhere, if you've got tutoring, that's basically like having a class. So if you miss that, it's almost like you got an absence in a class, and then they deal with it on their end. But all that stuff is built in. It's just to make these guys accountable. So if you got a meeting with me at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're expected to be there at 10 o'clock. If you've got to get 6 study hall hours a week, you're expected to get these study hall hours. It's all about accountability and communication. So if you're going to be late to something, or if you can't show up, or whatever it is, communication is key. So it's accountability, communication, and really, they just stress academics in general. They want a good team GPA. They want to be one of those teams recognized at the end of the year as an academic, one of the top 30 or whatever the list is that comes out for wrestling. They want academic All-Americans. They want all academic ACC. So a lot of it, they stress to these guys the importance of education and doing the right thing.
You touch on some of the awards, all that dedication, all that hard work in the classroom. NC State Wrestling has really won and gotten noticed for some of the academic accolades. Is there anything that stands out that you're really proud of for the team or for an individual winning recently?
Well, I think, it's nice to see some of these guys that I've worked with that, being here for 2 years now. One or two of the guys that won it this last year were freshmen when I first got here, and you could see the struggle. I got here at the end of their first full semester in college, and some of them really struggled. Were forgetful of things. One of those that really needed a structure when I first got here, and this last year turned himself into an academic All-American. So I think it's cool to see those kind of things and to see the number of academic All-Americans that we have this year was impressive.
And a couple of big recruiting weekends coming up here for the NC State wrestling team with a lot of official visits. You play a role in some of those visits as you get to meet a lot of the recruits as they come to campus and get a feel for what they're looking for and getting into major-wise. How much do you enjoy the visits, and what advice are you offering to them while they're deciding is NC State the right place for them?
Yeah, those visits are fun. You get to meet some of those guys coming in. You get to meet their families. Talk to them about NC State. I think some of the things I really stress is the type of education that they're getting here. NC State is known as a rigorous school. It is known as a school where you get a good education. The job placement's really, really high once you actually get a degree and leave this place. And so that's one of the things I always stress to the recruits that I meet with is if you come here and you do everything you're supposed to do, you're going to leave here with a degree. Shoot, some of them even leave with 2 degrees by the time they leave here, and you're going to get a job. And so I think that's important when you're looking at the future. You're not going to be able to wrestle forever. And so you want some of these guys to be set up for success once they leave here. And, if they get a good education, they're going to get a good job when they leave here. And so that's important.
Marcus, it was great to catch up. You do a lot of tireless work behind the scenes and keeping our guys straight with their grades and keeping them eligible just to compete. So I know I want to thank you for your continued hard work, and a big thanks for talking to us on the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast.
Yeah, not a problem. Appreciate it.
This Hidden Heroes segment of the Wolfpack Wrestling podcast has been brought to you by a very generous donation by one of our listeners who wanted to remain anonymous. We're very appreciative of that individual's gift to this podcast, and we look forward to receiving a few more gifts over the years. We are trying something new on this episode of the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast, as we are having a guest that is outside the Wolfpack program join us to talk about how he views NC State in the ACC and on the national level here in the preseason. This past week, Flow Wrestling started to roll out their conference rankings, where NC State's guys sit in the ACC in each weight class. And joining us to talk about those rankings is the guy that put them together, Dan Seifring. Dan, thanks for joining us on the podcast to talk some ACC preseason rankings.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me, Brian. I really appreciate coming on the podcast. As a matter of fact, I am a subscriber and listener to the podcast.
We like to hear that. We are always looking for more subscribers, so we appreciate that. But kind of before we start, I wanted to take a look at your background. You told me you're not an actual employee of Flow Wrestling, but you do help them with their conference rankings. So I guess before we start to talk about where we stand in the ACC rankings, tell us a little bit about your background and how you like the sport of college wrestling.
Sure. So actually, I'll be 50 this year. So I was a high school wrestler, and I would probably say I might be the worst kid to ever go through my high school program. So I have that going for me. So I was always a student of the game. So when I graduated high school, my coach, my high school coach, Coach Scott, said, "Hey, Dan, why don't you look to maybe coach at the rec level?" And so I'm 18 years old, and I was not going away to college, just going to county college. So I said, "Sure, I'll do that." So he knew that even though I wasn't a great wrestler, he knew I had a liking for the sport right away. And so I did that for about 10 years before I got married and, moved a little bit away from town and started having kids. And then now probably for the last few years, I really want to do something back in the sport. And I was looking at a few different things, and I was always interested in the sport. I followed New Jersey wrestling. I'm in New Jersey, and I have a streak going to the New Jersey State Finals now for 34 years in a row. So I could say I've always been around the sport, but I really want to get back into it a little bit more. I follow Rutgers Wrestling. I'm actually, full disclosure, I am a Rutgers Wrestling season ticket holder. So, and actually, what I did a few years ago, I was getting back into really following more of the college Division I wrestling, and I saw this website pop up. It was WrestleStat.com, and it's a site now that I'm actually partners with a guy of, because I really liked what he was doing. It's a vision that I really thought of. I just didn't know how to do it. So he started rolling out this site, WrestleStat, in 2014. I got in contact with him, asked him how I could help him, and then for a couple of years I was just really putting in results for him. So it really kept me really knowing a lot of what's going on, because I'm really typing in every result that's happening in the D1 wrestling world. So did that for a couple of years. I was really just helping him out. He asked me to be partners with him, and now I am. And I guess I was talking with the Flow guys a little bit through Twitter, and last year they wanted to do a conference ranking, and the way it was told to me, the guy Nomad, if you're familiar with Flow Wrestling, was in a meeting with Christian Piles and Andrew Spey, and then Christian was asking, well, this is going to be a pretty big task, and I don't think they wanted to put more manpower on the guys that they had. So they asked, do you guys know of anyone that might want to do this? And apparently my name came up, and now I sit here and starting my second year of doing conference rankings for them.
Okay, and in your research of these Flow Wrestling ACC rankings, not all the rosters are set yet. So as you've learned, you've even had to adjust a little bit here. So I'm going to say this is your best guess as to where guys at certain weights are going to be for the upcoming season. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely fair to say. For some of the teams, we do reach out. I say we, some of the flow guys will reach out and try to get some early predictions of rosters. Some of these rosters, a little bit for the ACC, it's really a great conference to where you do know at least a good amount of the roster. Now, like you said, though, we rolled these out, and then within a couple hours, we're getting messages from different coaches saying, "Oh no, this guy's going to be here. I'm hearing this," and so we do make changes, and we'll make them on the fly, and especially like you said, because it's preseason, and we don't know these rosters, and honestly, I don't even know if the coaches know the rosters, how it's going to be.
Now, normally with our guests, I do a lot of research and have some questions ready to ask them. But with this interview, I want to go a little different route. Dan, I pulled up your flow rankings, and I'm just going to go weight by weight. First, I'll read what you wrote about the weight class, then offer my 2 cents, especially talking about the NC State wrestler at that weight. Then I'll turn it over to you, and I want you to tell us how you see the NC State wrestler, how you see the weight class shaping up. So if you're ready to go, I think we'll start at 125 here.
Let's go.
Now, 125 just happens to be, it's the only weight where both ACC finalists return. For you had NC State Sean Foss ranked number 2 in the preseason. He was the actual ACC champion last year. And above him, you had Louis Hayes of Virginia. Now, Hayes and Foss, they split a couple last year. Foss won in the ACC finals, but Hayes came out in the second round of the NCAA tournament. So just talk about your thought process there. You have a sophomore in Hayes and a senior in Foss.
Yes, actually, you probably you did my work for me, because it really came down to, like you said, they split matches last year. Foss did win the conference tournament, and then Hayes gets him back in the NCAAs. I in a situation like that, I tend to not look at their overall records and the whole season, but I do tend to go with who won the last match, and that's, again, it's nothing set in stone. With the match that Foss won, he won 4-0, and the Hayes match went into overtime that he won. So these guys, they're ranked 1 and 2. Hayes won, Foss 2, but I could see this weight going either way. Foss won it last year, and I would not be surprised if either one of these guys wins this weight. I could see him wrestling a couple times again this coming season, and maybe having the same results of splitting the matches.
And of course, I already messed up because I broke my own rules where I said I would read what you wrote. But you actually said NC State has some of the toughest decisions to make with regards to what weight class everyone's going, especially the lower weights. Expect names in divisions to change as the season progresses. So 125, the top 4 guys you had ranked were all starters last year, 2 freshmen from a couple other schools. So looks like how that's shaping up. Moving straight over to 133, and you wrote, Jack Mueller of Virginia is planning to take a red shirt. So I'm sure that changed your rankings once these were posted. But last year, 133 actually qualified all 6 of its wrestlers for the NCAA tournament. I think that's just phenomenal. And you have as the preseason number 1, NC State's Tariq Wilson. Wilson just happens to be the only returning guy from 133. So tell us a little bit about this 133 class where these names are all brand new except for Tariq.
Yeah, so it's funny. Tariq actually has, as you know, Tariq finished 4th in the conference last year, but 3rd in the NCAA. So that's quite an NCAA tournament run, as we all know he had. I'll tell you, there will be 2, although they're new faces to the ACC, there's some good transfers here in Corbin Myers coming in from Edinburgh and Gary Wayne Harding coming in from Oklahoma State. Gary Wayne Harding is a former 2-time NCAA qualifier. Also, Corbin Myers qualified for the NCAAs last year. No All-Americans there from those 2, but and actually I do put Mickey Filippini, if that's how you pronounce it, as number 2, and just because he's been in the conference a little longer, and there was really no head-to-heads to go off of with those top 4. But with Tariq finishing 3rd last year in the NCAAs, and he made the semifinals of the NCAAs, he had to be the number 1 here.
And we'll move up to 141, and just selfishly for NC State, Kevin Jack was about an 8-year starter, so new starter for the Wolfpack. But you read about 141. The Wolfpack could go with either Moore's brother, Jamel or Jamal, to fill the void left by Kevin Jack. We're also getting word that national qualifier Josh Feinsilver of Duke is going to move from 133 to 141. So at 141, NC State, you have penciled in Jamal Morris as the number 3 preseason. 141 returns an ACC champion and Brett Moore of Virginia Tech. You have AC Headley of North Carolina too, and Virginia and Pitt are both moving a couple weights, and you have their new guys at 141. But just talk about 141 here.
Yeah, so again, Brett Moore, returning champion here. So obviously beat Kevin Jack, who's an incredible wrestler for NC State for, like you said, 8 years. So he had to come in at number 1. And AC Headley was a national qualifier last year. 15-15 is kind of one of those ones where he was third seed in the conference last year. He had some, as I said, 15-15, so he had some losses in there. Also, one of his losses was to Yanni. He lost 7-6 to Yanni. I mean, so he's in a lot of matches. With Jamal, or even it could be Jamel. You might have a better shot at that than I do. I'm not sure who North Carolina State will go with, but I think I just had to go with AC Headley over him, just because he's got a little more experience during the regular season wrestling these dual meets, which is, they could be, when you're wrestling these teams in the ACC and everywhere else, it's they're tough matches, and you got to get up for these every sometimes twice a week. So we went with Headley over Morris on that.
It will be interesting to see, because if it's one of the two Morses, I'm not sure how we're going to tell them apart. So it could be either one. But Jamal was actually at 149 last year, and Jamel was actually at 133 last year. So both are going to have to change weight classes, but both have a lot of experience. I'm going to go up to 149, and something new for NC State. We have a transfer. Justin Oliver is coming over at NC State and is penciled in there at Central Michigan. He was a All-American as a freshman and reached the round of 12 the last 2 years. And I thought it was interesting. You have Mitch Feinsilver of Duke in there. He was at 157 last year, but he was top 10 all year and the number 12 seed going in the tournament. So 149 wide open. Carolina has a highly talented freshman in there, and Virginia Tech returns a senior. So just talk about what you see out of 149.
Yeah, I think it's a great weight class, at least 4 deep. When you're looking at our 4th guy is Austin O'Connor, like you said, had a redshirt year last year as a freshman. He went 20-3. It's probably gonna make some noise in there. And you come up, you got Ryan Blees, who actually took 2nd in the conference, and he's ranked 3rd this year. NCAA qualifier last year, went 1-2. Like you said, Mitch Feinsilver, we actually originally had him ranked at 157, but we got word as soon as those rankings came out, and from someone very close to Duke, that he believes Feinsilver will be down at 149. And then, like you said, a big transfer for North Carolina State. It's really going to help them a lot. Probably something like this could help them win the division, actually, with a tough Virginia Tech team. So, Justin Oliver, like you said, he went 3-2 last year. He's a former All-American, 2-time blood round guy. So he's going to be in the mix of the NCAAs again this year.
And jumping up to 157, you wrote freshman finalist Hayden Hidley. Headline's a tough group of 6 competitors, although Feinsilver's moved down to 149, kind of played a little bit of havoc in your rankings. And for NC State, starting at 157, this is a 4 straight redshirt sophomores from NC State's number 1 recruiting class in 2016. So the first time that these 4 guys are all going to be in the lineup. At number 1, you have Hayden from NC State, obviously, returning NCAA finalist. Behind him, Kennedy Monday from Carolina. Those two had a great duel where Hayden really got a lot of takedowns in the 3rd period. But that class really deep again. Your top 4 guys are all well known. How do you see 157?
Yeah, so actually we originally had, like you said, we had Feinsilver here, but we also had Mekhi Lewis from Virginia Tech here as well. And now we've been told, and these things can change as well, is that he might be going up to 165 and McFadden up to 174. So you throw Feinsilver and Mekhi Lewis in here. Gosh, that's a heck of a weight class. So it might have opened up a little bit here, but Hayden coming in as first in the conference, took 2nd in the NCAAs as a freshman, redshirt freshman. Really had an incredible year. I believe he was undefeated going into the NCAA. So obviously the top pick here. Kennedy Monday, took third in the conference, where Rahimi took fourth, so that they kind of filled in nicely there. And with most likely Mackay going up to 165, it's going to leave a spot here for BC LaPrade to come in and see what he could do. But it's a very deep weight class, and you got two freshmen rounded out.
And we're going to jump up to 165. 165, 174, even after you posted this, a lot of movement from Virginia Tech. So now that you've adjusted, 165, you wrote, word is that redshirt freshman Mackay Lewis will go up to 165. That means McFadden, return All-American, will go up to 174. For NC State, you noted Thomas Bullard in there as the number 2 seed right now. Bullard redshirted last year, going 12-3. He was a 2017 NCAA qualifier at 157 pounds as a true freshman, but now coming back into the dual lineup, and Lewis redshirted last year. So a couple of wrestlers in the top 2 of your poll here that weren't in the lineups last year.
Yeah, and they actually, Mackay Lewis and Tommy Bullard actually did wrestle last year, where Mackay Lewis won a 12-5 win over him. So that definitely got him the edge here, because it was really came down to either one of these guys could have been number 1 at this weight once we made the weight changes, or with McFadden going up. I still think it's going to be a very good weight class with Zach Feinsilver actually took second in the conference last year to McFadden. So he's very good, but we got him at number 4 because he actually lost a match to Wenzel last year. He lost twice to Mackay Lewis, and I got him above McClure just because of their overall season. He qualified for the NCAAs, went 1-2. I actually lost a match to McClure last year, but we do have him ranked ahead of him because of his overall season.
And jumping up to 174, you made the adjustment. McFadden returning All-American for Virginia Tech. You have number 1 right now. At number 2, you have NC State's Daniel Bullard, who was an NCAA qualifier last year as a redshirt freshman, and he placed 3rd in this weight class. And right behind him, Matt Feinsilver was up in those national rankings all year too, and Bullard beat him in the ACC. So what do you see from 174, especially now with McFadden penciled in at that weight?
Yeah, McFadden comes in. Obviously, he's a junior. He's a 2-time All-American. As you know, he took first last year at the conference at 165. Very nice tournament again this year. The NCAA is going 5-2. So he slotted in there. Whether he was going 165 or 174, I believe he was the easy choice to be the top seed here, or top ranked, I should say. Last year, Bullard and Feinsilver actually split matches, with Bullard winning the consolations, the ACC. So he did get the push up there with that last win on that.
And up at 184, very interesting weight class in my opinion here. You got, I believe, 2 returning All-Americans in Zavasky of Virginia Tech and Ness of North Carolina. And you wrote, final X competitor Nick Reenan comes off a redshirt for the Wolfpack and tops a tough weight class here. And you noted that Reenan redshirted last year, but he really had a breakout summer by going to Final X, winning the World Team Trials. So with Reenan, especially, he was down at 174 when he was competing as a true freshman, making the jump here. This is a very top-heavy weight class.
Extremely top heavy weight class. Actually, even if you look at the number 4 guy, I mean, Nino Bonacorsi, he's had an incredible redshirt season, and although he's only a freshman, he's going to be a good one too. But when you look at Nick Reenan, I mean, obviously, like you say, he took a redshirt last year. Actually wrestled, I believe it was in the Hokie Open, and he actually beat Zach Savasky in overtime 8-6. So that really gave him, I know his freestyle season was great, but I'll tell you, if he didn't have that one match last year, he might have came in at 3 here, but with that win, or you hate to split the 6th and 7th in the NCAAs. As Zavasky took 6th last year and Ness took 7th, but Nick would have been looking at anywhere between 1 and 3 into the rankings. But with that 8-6 victory over Zach, he definitely gets the nod here as the number 1 guy.
And 197 NC State, we are replacing an NCAA champion, Michael Machiavello. And you actually changed this since it came out, so you talk about people laying, but Malik McDonald now penciled in to go 197. He was up at 285 last year. And Virginia Tech has a transfer coming in. So this weight class here, you're really not sure because none of these guys wrestled in the ACC last year, but you have McDonald at number 2 and Slay of Virginia Tech at number 1.
That's correct. And, Slade coming in, transferring from Bucknell. He missed all of last year. I think he wrestled one match last year, but he missed it to injury. He is a three-time NCAA qualifier, though. So he did get the nod. Malik McDonald, great wrestler. Like you said, he wrestled 285 last year. I know he even though he's listed on the North Carolina State roster as 197, I still thought he might go 285 this year, and then we got word. And to be honest with you, it was no one from North Carolina State, so I'm hoping I'm correct in moving him down to 197. But 2017 NCAA qualifier at 285 for North Carolina State. I think this really. Tom or Malik could win this weight class. I'll say that. I mean, Malik McDonald has shown that he's done incredible things, and to do that against 285 pounders, assuming if he's going 197 this year, I can only assume he wasn't more than 225. So, and then you got your third ranked guy from Duke. He took fourth in the conference last year, Alex Schenk. So, it's going to be a pretty good conference.
Dan, we like to keep people guessing here. I like to keep them guessing so that they'll listen to podcasts so they know which way our guys are going. So, maybe we left a little surprise for you. But
all righty.
Going up to 285, a lot of change from last year at this weight. Billy Miller comes in, transfer from Edinboro to Virginia Tech, but you lost Jacob Casper, who is actually helping training at the Wolfpack RTC right now. But for NC State, it's kind of up in the air. We got two freshmen that will come in. Colin Lawler, he is a four-time Texas Prep State champ, was a 2018 National Prep champ. And Deontay Wilson from New York, he was a state champion and 166 career wins. So neither one of these guys has had a collegiate match. So you put them at number 6. But could you talk about the 285 weight class in the ACC?
Yeah, and normally we do put any true freshman down at the bottom of the ranking, so that's just an easier way so we don't have to try to figure these out. But so regardless if we used Colin Lawler or Deontay Wilson, we would have had him that's ranked 6th in here. I was kind of wondering, looking at the rosters, if maybe if you want to keep those both in redshirt, maybe you have a guy like Tyler Johnson come up. I think he wrestled one match last year at 285, and maybe have him come in man 285 for if Malik's not coming back up. So I think North Carolina State obviously has a lot of options there with the weight class though for the ACC. Yeah, Billy Miller coming in as an Edinburgh transfer. Edinboro. We gave him the number 1 nod over Corey Daniels, who, NCAA qualifier. He could certainly win this weight class. I believe Win Magazine just came out with their rankings. He's ranked in the top 20 as well as Billy Miller. And Demetrius Thomas from Pittsburgh, I believe it was, I want to say Division II, he All-American. And, he's coming into Pittsburgh, and we'll see what he could do. I think he might surprise some people.
And so that kind of wraps up your rankings. I want to talk about team brace now. You had NC State 8 of the top 2 seeds and 4 preseason number 1. So how do you see the conference overall going? I guess maybe 2 ways, if you could. Go duels, and then what do you think about the ACC tournament?
Oh, and I wish I would have done. I really didn't look at the dual lineups 1-to-1, but I will say
I wanted to throw you a curveball here.
Well, you did, so I might have to jump on WrestleStat real quick and do a dual comparison. We do it all on that website, so I hope everyone's checking that website out. But
that is a great plug, WrestleStat. You can go pick whatever team you want. They'll match up the duels and give you their opinion about. I mean, it is a great tool to have.
I appreciate it. But so when you're looking at the conference itself, like you said, you got 8 guys ranked in the top 2, where Virginia Tech, and I would say that it's certainly a 2-man race. It's North Carolina State and Virginia Tech. So Virginia Tech has 6 guys, but they have 5 number 1 ranked guys, where North Carolina State has 4 number 1 ranked guys. So I think it's going to be a heck of a race. I think North Carolina, NC State would certainly have the manpower to come out and win this tournament. So, I think it might be the closest race that they've ever had, to be honest with you. I would take North Carolina State very closely over Virginia Tech. So I think I'll see how that pans out. But that's who I would go with. I would go with North Carolina State at this point, looking at it.
Dan, it was great to have you on the podcast. Definitely something different. It was really interesting to get an outside perspective on our program, and definitely during the season, we're going to have to catch up with you again about maybe midway through and see how your rankings are playing out.
That'd be great. I'd love to talk to you again. And then real quickly, I did throw it into WrestleStat, the dual comparison. It does have Virginia Tech with the win over North Carolina State, 19-14. So we'll see how that works out as well.
Okay. Always trying to change that. So
exactly.
I want to thank everybody for listening today. This is your Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast covering all things NC State wrestling. Until next time, Wolfpack wrestling fans, go Pack.
Mentality Pop-Ins podcast is produced by the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, go to MatTalkOnline.com.